Just throwing this up there from the senses. This is a myth. This is not what compound eyes see. Is each lens is picking up a different part of the overall field of view. And the same way that each one of your receptors is picking up a different part of the overall field of view, and your brain constructs a picture out of that. Their brains construct a picture out of that. It may not be as high resolution as ours, but it's still a comprehensive picture of the whole thing. Okay, we're going on to the last chapter. And it's going to be about behavior. Well, if you take the equivalent mass and divide by 10 to the minus 3, you get the same result. True, but you're forgetting the basic premise of my theory, which is moo, moo, cluck, 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 cluck. Is that they don't want us to know. I was reading a cartoon recently with intelligent aliens, and the only animals they eat are intelligent. They think it's it's only ethical to eat things that can prepare for their preparation. So this is chapter 16. It is on behavior. The study of animal behavior, animals in their natural habitats, is called ethology. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about. Designing studies to study animals in their natural habitats is always fun, because there's always the possibility of artifacts from you being there. Your presence may affect their behavior. And so, do you come up with an efficient form of camouflage? Can you observe properly from a distance? Is it okay, as Jane Goodall did with the chimps, to go and actually live among them? It's very, very difficult. And of course, your studies are not really experiments. You don't really, in most cases, have the opportunity to run control tests. And then it's just a matter of interpretation, where people are, absolutely sure this is what's going through the brain of an animal whose brain they can't actually access, whose understanding of a situation they're kind of figuring out from their observations. So you watch something happen. And of course, the natural question is, so why did that happen? There's two levels of causation. There's the proximate causation, and there's the ultimate causation. Give you an example. Observing from a distance, troop of baboons. Baboons adapted to open grasslands, have a lot of adaptations in common with people, because they've been very similar animals in very similar situations. If they weren't four-legged, maybe they'd be more even closer to people, but they're monkeys, and monkeys are built differently than apes are. So here's the situation. One day, there's two young baboons playing, and one of them gets a hold of something, and the other one takes it away. And the one that had the piece taken away starts to complain. The mother of that baboon comes over, takes whatever it is, the object away from the thief, and whacks the thief. And the thief gets up, looks around, just goes back to doing what it was doing. Now, the thief's mother is much higher in the strata of culture in this baboon troop than the original young one's mother. But she wasn't around. A day or two later, the one that had done the whacking is sitting doing something. And the one that had gotten whacked comes over the crest of a hill, looks down and sees the one that had hit it, looks down the other way and sees Mom, bigger, stronger, much more allowed to exert violence on lesser members of the troop. The little guy goes over, sits down next to the baboon that had whacked it, and just starts to scream bloody murder. Mom's on the other side of the hill. She doesn't see anything what's happening. She just hears what's happening. Comes up on top of the hill, sees her little one sitting next to the other female, screaming, comes down, beats the crap out of the other female. Proximate causation. The cry of the baby set off the behavior of the mother. Ultimate causation. Why did the young one do that? Is there enough empathy in a baboon that it could predict the behavior of its mother in that situation? It could say, if I go and do this, then mom will do this. She will misinterpret what's happening and go after this thing, this other female that I'm pissed at. That would be ultimate causation. Ultimate causation is kind of the evolutionary explanation, the inbuilt explanation for what's happening. What sort of features are being released in order to make this behavior happen? And are they, flexible? Are they inflexible? Is that what's going on that you could extrapolate to the entire species, or at least this entire group? Young one screams where mom can hear it. Mom comes to find out what's going on. Now with a baboon, maybe she can decide not to. Maybe she's doing something else, she ignores it. If she's compelled to respond, the way that an ant picking up alarmones is compelled to track that scent to its source, then that is a fixed action pattern of what's called stereotyped behavior. It's kind of programmed in. Very often called instinctive behavior. That kind of gives you the feeling that it's something simple, but it can be extremely complex. Is some things like migratory patterns are actually built in, and some of them aren't, but the ones that are built in are pretty complex. And there's almost always some sort of stimulus, some sort of interaction with the environment needed. There are what they call releasers, which does what it sounds like it does. It sets off the stimulus. Sound of the baby screaming is the releaser to the mother's behavior. Now sometimes the releaser is a big thing, but it turns out that the whole thing is not causing the behavior response. I don't know why these last couple of weeks, when I start talking on this, is that I have trouble with my throat. Stickleback fish are a very common model animal for aggressive behavior. The males attack each other. And so if you have a male in a tank, you put another male in there, they'll go after one another. And the question is, okay, the male is the releaser, but does it have to be the whole male? And they found out that they could make a fake male, male out of rubber, put it in there, and it would go, the encroached male would go after that. And then it was a matter of, okay, how much can we peel off of this and get this same response? Well, it turns out the males have a red spot behind their gills. And all you need to set off the aggressive response is a fish-shaped object with the red spot on it. That red spot is the sign stimulus. It is the stimulus that really sets off the behavior. It doesn't have to be a whole male fish. It just has to be a male fish that with the red spot. You will see fish that have a line through their eyes and a dot just at the base of their tails. they are taking advantage of the fact that that a lot of predators instinctively attack when they're trying to grab a fish. They don't attack the fish, they attack where the fish is about to go. So like a cuttlefish will take a shot in front of the fish because the fish is going to react, and in the time it takes for the cuttlefish to get its tentacles, its arms out, the fish is going to have moved out of position. But if it goes in front of it, well, a lot of those predatory animals cue on where the eye is on the prey. And a circular spot is the sign stimulus. That line through the circular spot seems to cause the predators to see the other round spot near the tail as the front of the fish, as the eye. And when they take a shot, they'll take a shot literally behind the fish while the fish is scooting out of the way. Reproductive stereotype behavior. What sort of messages need to be conveyed? This is especially tricky in predatory animals that don't differentiate, that are perfectly happy being cannibals, like something like spiders, where the male needs to be able to mate with the female and keep himself alive at least long enough to get the job done. There are actually spiders where the packaging that the male does with his sperm is a one-time only event anyway. And there is, I think, a redback tarantula, or some sort of spider where the male kind of comes in, holds the female up, transfers his sperm packet using his pedipalps, and then actually surrenders himself to the female. And she bites him and feeds on him. And during that period of time, his sperm packet is opening up and sperm are being released into the female. And there's no way other males can get at her during that time period. So, but that is his stereotypical behavior. He does not try to survive the encounter. He purposely sacrifices himself, and it is sexual selection, right? It definitely increases his chances of being the father of all of her offspring. And therefore, it's a worthwhile sacrifice in terms of evolutionary value. And there's lots and lots of reproductive stereotype behavior. There is something that called handicap theory, where so you have this ornate display that the male gives the female. And you go, okay, well, that's sexual selection. Okay, great. So it's very useful to the males that they produce, because those are the ones that display. But it actually turns out that there's a message to a peacock having a huge tail is not just a message of, look how wonderful I am and look at this great display. It's, look at what I've been able to build through my lifetime and not get killed doing it, because this thing is a bit of a handicap. I can't move as quickly, I can't fly away as quickly, and yet here I am. Which means not only are our male offspring going to benefit from my wonderfulness, but there's a message in my handicap that the females are going to be better survivors as well. They actually apply this to displays that people have, where look at this expensive car I can buy. I can waste money on this car. I can waste my resources. Is that our offspring are going to be able to build much better resources and be, much better human beings than you would if you married this guy over here. But handicap theory is embedded in what appears to be male sexual displays, a message that this is survival fitness as well as reproductive fitness. The genetics of these things gets tricky. Is that okay? I'm just trying to remember the example. Some sort of little bird that migrates from Germany to Spain when the time comes, the day gets certain short days that they instinctively migrate. Now, some birds have to learn their migration routes. These, it seems to be built into them. They orient and fly until they get to something that's a sign releaser for, okay, you're here. they did some experiments where they, you know how you can expose things and cause mutations, radiation, that sort of thing. They keep these birds in a big enclosure, and the outside of the enclosure is basically correction paper, you know, the stuff that you used to be able to put in a typewriter. It's got this white powder on it. Well, when these birds are in this enclosure and the instinct to migrate goes off. Oh, actually, they didn't mutate them. I told you I wasn't going to remember it all. When the urge to migrate goes off, they orient in the direction of Spain, and they claw at that wall. And so that's your marker for what direction they've gone to. There's a subpopulation of this group that isn't going to Spain. It's going to England, which isn't necessarily the best place to migrate in the wintertime in Europe. It's better than where they were in eastern Germany, but it's still. And the question is, so have they followed the wrong group and learned this, or is this a mutation that has changed their orientation? So they took eggs from this group, so no possibility of learning from the adults, raised them in these enclosures, and when the time came for them to migrate, when the days got short enough, because they were in a daylight exposure thing, because they knew they had to be, and they would orient toward England and scratch at that part of the enclosure. So they had actually changed their orientation through some sort of mutation event that was inbuilt, was very much a stereotype behavior. Learned behavior. Modification of behavior through experience. Sorry. Where you can take behavior that you would normally do, take input from the environment and go, okay, we're going to do it differently this time. Is that this is what we need to do based on experience that we've had. Some of this involves patterns. So, chick in its nest, a shadow passes overhead, they instinctively react. They crouch. But it's not a fixed action pattern, it's a malleable action pattern. Over time, they learn the difference between small, safe birds going by and a hawk going by. And so they habituate to the regular birds, and they sensitize to the silhouette of the hawk. The silhouette of the hawk going by, and you can do this with literally a piece of paper cut out like a hawk. Take that over the top of them, and they'll duck into the nest. Whereas, a piece of paper with a regular bird on it, and they just keep sitting there. Is that habituation is you get used to something. Sensitization is you react strongly to something. You learn to react strongly to something. The famous Pavlov's dogs, where every time he fed them, he would ring a bell. Is he would sense what he was doing was sensitizing them to the bell. They connected the sound of the bell to feeding, and he was measuring their saliva and probably their other behaviors too, although that never gets mentioned. And I've never actually read the original studies. But he sensitized them to the bell associated with food. We do that with pets all the time, right? We say things to them and they know, oh, you want a treat? And they know what's going to happen. Are you hungry? And they know what's going to happen. They're sensitized to the words, to the sounds. Sometimes to the can opener. Some behavior has a limited window of opportunity. And you'll hear people say that in humans, that if you learn a language well, really learn a language, before about the age of 12, then you can speak it like a native speaker. But if you learn it past the age of 12, you're always going to have your own inbuilt accent. You're going to sound like a foreign speaker of that second language. Now, the age 12 is a very fuzzy age, but it is a reliable imprinting thing, is that we can learn new languages well early in our lives. We do it worse later in our lives, and we lose kind of the ability to completely build up the muscle memory we need to speak like a native later on. If a canary is not raised around male canaries, if a male canary is not raised around male canaries and hearing them sing, when they get to be reproductive age, they will sing, but they will not sing a typical canary song. They need to learn the nuances of a canary song from males. And when they get old enough, if you expose them to other males singing, it's too late. Is that they don't learn to do the song properly, learning as adults. They have to hear that song at an age where they're not actually singing it, and they imprint it. When a lot of geese and ducks and stuff, when they hatch from the eggs, is that they follow mom to food and follow mom back. Well, how do they know mom? She's the largest living thing around them when they hatch out of the egg. And they literally use the word imprint. They imprint on her. Well, if you're raising ducks or geese in an incubator, when they hatch out, if you're the largest living object there, they imprint on you. They'll follow you everywhere. They made a movie about this where somebody needed to actually put a small flyer together and to get their geese to go south for the winter. And then on the way, the geese imprint on the route. They learn the route that first time back and forth. And then, the next generation of geese learns it from them. So it's a learned behavior. But the imprinting of following that person or goose or whatever, that won't stay open forever. Is that it's a fairly short window of time, I say like a week or less after they hatch from the eggs, that they will follow large objects. Maybe even less than that. Okay, that's a good place to stop.